We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. Here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, we have Jonathan Tuttle, who is a managing director over at a fund that invests in mobile home parks. And we have a lot to cover here. But before we start things off, I want to make sure that we make sure everybody has your contact information and how they would reach out to you if they find something of interest here today. So why don't we start things off there, Jonathan, and give everybody your contact information.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. Excited about this. I've listened to the show, so there's a great opportunity to provide some value to your listeners. I have two different businesses in the real estate space. I have a mobile home park fund. It's called Midwest Park Capital. There's two websites. Midwest Park Capital is more of the informational website, and then Midwest Park Capital Fund is more if you want a credit investor and you want to actually see the PPM. And then I have for the everyday American that's just getting started in real estate that wants to learn more about getting into this space or get the cheapest form of real estate, basically investing, and that's called the Mobile Home Wealth Academy.
Yes,
two websites to get a hold of me. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, no, this is a really interesting topic. You know, the Mobile Home Wealth Academy, especially because we do talk to quite a few newer investors. They're trying to get into real estate investing for that first time. That first low-hanging fruit that they think of is wholesaling. Yep. And everybody keeps pushing the concept of wholesaling. I think the mobile homes flipping or holding the note or holding the paper on it, I mean, that is also low-hanging fruit and something that is typically overlooked. So if let's start at the very beginning there. How would somebody jump into like mobile home investing?
Sure. That's a great point. And to what you said, the surprising factor is about 8% of entire America lives in mobile home parks. And it's kind of unknown fact that that many people live in it. And there's about 60 million Americans that need affordable housing. And basically mobile homes, and, it's sometimes people call them trailer, but they've been around since, the 50s and 60s. And you get an older 50, 60, 70 unit for a couple grand, $1,000, if that. You'll obviously want to put some repairs to, optimize it and the top dollar for it. But the easiest way, honestly, is probably, which a lot of people when they're first starting out are going to really appreciate that, and especially right now with COVID, is finding it on Craigslist and Facebook. You can find a lot of them on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. It's pretty much untapped because a lot of the old owners, they don't really pay attention to it, and they just care about the park. So that's the big money to them, is keeping the unit in there. And then there's the opportunity for the everyday investor to come in with their own capital or make a deal with one of the tenants that's moving out or just wants to get rid of it to pretty much scoop it up for nothing or for very little, and sometimes even just flip it for the contract. And you see that all the time.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've thought especially interesting here is that when you're talking about mobile homes, it's not like you're exchanging land and there's not as many requirements and
right.
overseers associated with it. You're essentially just transferring a title like a car.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
100%. Yep. Oh, sorry. What was your question?
No, I was just wondering is there a process associated with that somebody needs to be aware of? You typically go to a title company for a land contract or transaction. What does it look like for a trailer house?
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's kind of like flipping cars, but it's flipping trailers.
Yeah.
And the terminology kind of in the pre-HUD, basically 1976, House of Urban Development, basically changed. They've actually got involved. So anything after 1976 has a lot stricter requirements. Before that, anybody could just build their own house or little manufactured housing. And then 1976 came about, and they set standards from the government. This has to be, they even put a little badge in the back, a VIN number. And pre 50s, 60s, or pre-1976, a lot of them came on the trailers. So you see the older ones that actually have the trailer. The newer ones are actually kind of bolt off, 90s and newer quality construction. But yeah, the process is just like going to the VIN. You go into the DMV exchanging titles and making sure the taxes are paid up to due, making sure there's not any arrears taxes. Usually pay those, but a lot of times these people that have been in them, because one of the benefits of being in mobile homes is comparatively, for example, in some of the parks we own, the taxes are $10-$20 a month, and if they went across the street for a single family house that's $150,000, they're paying $200-$400 per month. They're saving that much money, a couple grand a year times, they've been there 10, 15, 20 years. That average is about 14, 15 years. They have 30,000 of basic equity, but it's just tax money saved, and they still go to the same school, they still have the same fire, the same police, they get to go to the same library, all the same benefits the normal person gets, lives in a single family home, but they're just paying a lot less taxes. So basically, when you're looking to invest, just make sure the taxes are caught up. But remember, you're paying a lot less taxes, and then also making sure you have a clean title, and then you could actually, that's one thing you want to really be careful about. You don't want to make something that doesn't have a VIN, because it's going to be a long process. Don't let anybody say, you'll be able to get it, it's going to come in the mail. That could be a big headache, and that could be months of headache. So.
So let's say, I've run into trailer park owners who end up with these trailer houses. And frankly, like you mentioned early on, they're just focused on the lot rent.
Exactly.
It's almost a hassle to deal with these trailer houses. How would you suggest somebody go to a current trailer park owner and start that type of conversation?
Yeah, this is a perfect opportunity. There's a couple of value points, exactly what you said. Because the person that owns this, a lot of people have developed the trailers. They haven't really developed any new parks. Officially, I've heard a couple of different things, but the data says about 10 new parks in the last 20 years, because the city, going back to the taxes, they don't want it, not my backyard. They want the higher tax built homes. You can't put a mobile home officially on like a residential lot, because just the zoning and then the tax purposes again. Right. So the best avenue to go is these owners have had it for so long, they're worth multi-millions most likely, even if a small park. So they want the rent. The lot rent, the continually monthly rent, that's the cash flow from the business. And just having that, if it's even a 1970s home is worth $30,000, $50,000 on the actual value of the park. So for them, if you guys come in and find it from put a couple grand in, get it for a grand or two down, make it $5,000 or $7,000 profit, they'd love it, because they're not putting any capital, they're not putting any time, and you're putting resources, and they have the ultimate say to prove the person to come in. So you're basically just keeping their park beautiful, providing a newer, better product, because you're making the unit better. You're also putting all the money, your own money out of it. But at the same time, compared to like any other real estate, where else could you get involved in real estate for like $4,000 or $5,000? Right. You're talking about a unit, right? 10 grand, and it depends on the state. So like you get some of these people, going back to your question, one of the best opportunities to get it, first go to like the local owners, the mom and pops that have had it for 30, 40 years, because they originally developed it. A lot of them are hands off. They don't even want to do the work anymore. They just want to just collect the rent and be on their way. That's pretty much it. Go to the mom and pop owner, drive to the local parks, talk to the property manager and say, hey, I would like to help, I'm not trying to take these out of the park. I just want to beautify them. So if you need extra, somebody to come in to fix and flip them, and so you guys have better quality products, so people come to your park more often, I could help you with that. And then also just putting up those, the old school signs, looking for mobile homes in the corner. Some people do that. And then like going back to what I said, the Facebook, Google, or not Facebook, and then Craigslist, not Google. You can probably do Google ads too. I've never tried it.
No. So like, have you ever, you basically delved into a little marketing there. Have you explored some of that for this type of thing, trying to find motivated sellers just like we would for single family homes?
Yeah, we have a lot of case studies. We have our own parks, but because one thing in the industry is we don't want to poach from your neighboring park. So a lot of times if you're a park owner, you don't say, hey, I'm going to go to your local competition park and say I'm going to pull the unit out, basically, because that's another benefit too. When you own the park, it costs $5,000 to $10,000 for the pickup. You get a certified, insured transporter, take everything down, put it back up, put the skirting on. It's a big hassle, but sometimes the value of these homes, because a new home is 50, new model home is 40, 50, 75, and like 200, 100 for like a new, the line double wide. So they'd rather get a $10,000 unit, spend 10 to put it in there and get the cash flow. But so you don't want to basically get from a local competition. So
sure. No, I was just kind of curious as to like, even if that person you end up leaving it at that trailer park. It was a way to find discounted mobile homes.
Yeah, and also dealers. So dealers will have old stock sometimes they get rid of. So find your local dealers. Not as many as depending on the market. So I'm in Chicago and Midwest, and Michigan's the third biggest state for the number of mobile home parks. But if you're in Florida or California, they're everywhere. And then also you have like the rent control in those states. And if you're flipping trailers, so we're doing I'm just doing Midwest prices. But if you're in Florida and some of these other states, you're going to flip a $20,000, $30,000 unit for $50,000, $60,000 in Florida. Or California, that's a whole nother world over there. You get a 1980s home in like a nice high end area for $100,000 and you flip it for $200,000. It's just a totally different demographic. So if your listeners are in California, Oregon, Seattle, like that, Washington State, that area, you can make huge money. You can make 6 figures a flip, just like a regular house. And going back to one of the ways you could get it, literally just drive the parks and look for sale by owners. Because a lot of times people do a Saturday, Sunday, just drive through, get a list online, find the local parks, Saturday drive, get your Starbucks, drive for 2 hours, drive through all the parks, some MapQuest, just drive through and look for sale by owner. And a lot of these people, depending on the value of the home and what financial situation they're in, just call them up hey, I would like to, potentially sell this for you and market it, give you a top dollar, and you can flip the contract. So you can put under, make a price, do your market due diligence. Realtors will always price them really high, so they're not actually realistic prices. But do a little, price analysis of what the parks are or actual homes are in the market, and then try to do kind of a flip a contract like you do in regular single family. But this is even easier to sell it because you could use Facebook and Google. We keep saying Google, Facebook and Craigslist. You can use Google Ads, but then you could definitely do it. You could definitely do it, and instead of paying a realtor, that's another benefit. You're not paying the 5 or 6 points.
Sure. So what have you typically seen? Like if you're going into a trailer house and you're going to fix and flip it like this, what are some of those low hanging fruits of small cost but big impact?
Sure. The main things you want to look for when you're driving around is just kind of make sure you get inside and look at the units. So the things you're going to want to look for is the roofing, the skirting. The skirting is the very bottom part of the, it's basically a foot, 18 inches high. It's like a skirt that goes around it's basically that trim, my best way, because they're lifted up, obviously. So you look at that, because that costs about $1,000 if it's standard around the outside. That could be a big look at the deck. The deck could be around $250 to $500 repair, depending on the condition of it. The roof is the biggest thing. Newer model homes from the 2000s, 90s, 2000s will actually have shingles, but the old school homes from the 50s, 60s, 70s, it's way different. You have to coat it. So basically just check the roof, and then when you get inside of it, the only things you really have to worry about, the main thing too is you're not a single family. You have to knock down walls, because if you knock down walls, the whole thing's going to collapse.
Right.
So you want to make sure the flooring's good. So make sure there's not the floorboard. So if you don't, you might have to replace that. Check, make sure there's no leaking. So check the bathroom and by the sinks, and make sure the electrical outlets, there's no covered up burnt marks, because that means there was electrical, something with electrical. Make sure they didn't try to paint over it. People will be kind of sneaky sometimes, but the biggest cosmetic thing you could do too is just get clean the microwave, the stove, all that stuff. Replace the fixtures. Go to your local Home Depot, Menards, or wherever is by you. A lot of times the fixtures makes a lot of value. Clean the windows, paint the outside. You probably depending what kind of paint, but $500 to $1,000, on how much you want to paint the outside. Those are some quick fixes to add a lot of value. So you only have a small checklist of things you have to do, and then the real value is created by just finding the deal by driving around, looking for sale by owners, and then using Facebook and just to find opportunities, and then just raising the price. Then you typically get from a 70s home. You could get, depending on the market. So I'm going to do just the Midwest. Like I said, it depends on your market. So if you're in Florida, you could get a 70s home, 80s home. You're going to obviously have 30, 50,000, depending on the double wide, single wide, what community rents are. And also the biggest factor is what's the local housing stock is. So if a single family house is across the street, it's 150, you're not going to be able to get 75,000 for your mobile home. But the local house across the street, the average house, which you see in Florida and California, it's really weird. You'll have a mobile home park and then $1 million house across the street. So that brings the price of the mobile homes up, actually. So
right. No, this is really interesting. So, how do you mentioned check your market for the house values. Is there a way for people to easily do that? Like we have, I know it's the bane of the real estate industry, but Zillow actually makes it pretty easy
exactly.
to check out comparables for actual houses. Is there a tool that can be used for this?
That's probably, I mean, because you don't need to get a broker license and pay for the, your MLS. Zillow has pretty much the same data. You can kind of aggregate the data. You want about a third the price. So like if a mobile home, you look at their lot rents. So if the lot rents in the local market are like 300 or 400, or they're 500, like in the coastal cities, it could be 1,000 plus. You want to see that that's about a third the price of what the house is. So then you have leverage to raise the rent, and you also know you have leverage to command a higher price. So it's kind of basically just looking at what the local housing stock, and then also look at the local apartment buildings. So if the local apartment buildings, which the national average is about 1,300 across, if you class A, B, and C combined right now is about 1,300 nationally, and the local mobile home selling it for 400. So you have room to raise a little bit, and you have room to also command a higher price for the unit because there's a shortage of affordable housing. There's about 12 million mobile homes in the country and about 60 million people that need it. So if the rents double in the apartments in the local town, people could pay $600, and that means they could pay $15,000, $20,000 for the trailer. You might have to be creative with the financing and the down payment, or work with maybe the owner and say, hey, I'll fix this up, and maybe you can negotiate. So it's a lot of negotiating and being creative with the financing. Mm-hmm. So and some banks are starting to do it. I know it's called shadow financing. It was a big thing about 20 years ago. It was pre-2008. The mobile home industry went through. There was about 400,000 homes. It was like the peak in the late 90s of 400,000 mobile homes made in a year with like the big manufacturers. Mm-hmm. Last year, just to give you an example, was 100,000. When we can't develop new parks, and so the stocks, the stock quality has been, the quality of material and the quality of the manufacturing has been so good, so they haven't had the need for it, but they also can't. They were zero down, and like it was basically kind of what happened in 2007 with a regular single family. It was like zero down, no credit check, like, here you want a house, 30-year note, here's a mobile home. It's $50,000 and zero down, and a lot of people kind of bailed on it. Mm-hmm. So but some banks are starting to get more familiar with it, especially if they maybe do if they're working with the owner in the park, they're familiar with it, a small town or tertiary, secondary market, they might do the financing. But there's also, if you become a dealer, a mobile home dealer, which is not too hard, you could do it over like a month, a couple of weeks. It's like a little test you do. You could get some special financing offers too. It's called 21st Mortgage. It's actually one of Warren Buffett's companies.
Sure. So just to clarify then what you just said is that if you try to buy something like this and try to sell it on terms, are you saying that like an equivalent apartment, you're trying to target that as the monthly payment?
Half of that. Yeah, I would say half of that, and that gives you good cushion. So if, the rents are a third less, and then you could see if the local, Class C or like equivalent to what the mobile homes offering is very similar, you're not going to have the cushion to command a higher price. So it does take a little research, and we kind of go over it in the course. Hard to go over it in like real, 30 minutes here, but that's where the angle, that's where the value is created, though.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just not following it to a certain extent. So if you're saying, like, let's say an apartment is renting for $1,000 a month, mm-hmm. Is that what the mobile home plus the lot rent should be? Or are you saying?
No. Yeah, so it depends. Yeah, so it depends if they put a down payment or not. We always like to be half of that, and then you could go up a little more than that. So if we know the main buffer is to be about half of that, but if you have, for example, you're flipping a unit and the park's charging $300 rent, and then they have to pay $300 a month, that's $600. So there's still some room. But if like the local Class C apartment is only $700 for the same 2-bedroom, then you're in trouble, because they're gonna be like, well, maybe I should do the apartment building.
Yeah, I get it.
That's what I guess like the clarification is.
Sure. No, I don't know if you know who Mitch Stephen is, but when we talk to him, and he does this type of thing, but with land contracts with houses, and he targets the actual rent value, because people in their mind will choose owning for the same price as the rent.
Yeah.
But you're finding that when it comes to trailer houses, that's not typically the case.
Well, they eventually own it, though. So it is the same thing. If they don't buy it outright, and if they're doing financing, they usually do like a 3 or 5 year term, 3, 4, 5 year, depending what they can afford. with the rents, and the utilities. So yeah, they do that. That actually is a key with mobile homes because they rather live in the mobile home and say, I own this,
Sure.
and then simply in the local apartment.
Sure.
So their biggest competition is basically apartment buildings.
Okay.
C-plus.
So let's change the conversation just slightly because I'm fascinated with your acquisitions regarding trailer parks because, like you said, there's not a lot of new ones being developed right now because a lot of towns, I mean, it just has bad connotations, bad stigma associated with trailer parks. I guess you can thank the trailer park boys and just to keep feeding that, right? But tell us a little bit about your fund and how that works and how you find these trailer parks. And I mean, give us an overview of how that all goes down.
Sure. Yeah, great question. This niche is pretty fascinating. When I first got involved with it about 15 years ago, my friends are like, my dad got involved with it first, and my friends are like, what? Trailer parks? This is before like the TV shows or anything came out. They're like, what is that? And you're like, I'm in a suburb of Chicago, or like a trendy town, and like you're talking about trailer parks. They're not even around the area. There's not even one in Chicago. There's one like 60 miles outside the skirts of like basically Indiana, but they still know the stigma of it. But like I said before, about 60 million Americans need affordable housing. And we're only about 12 million mobile homes in the country, and it's about 8% of Americans live in it. So there's this huge need for affordable housing. It's not subsidized by the government, so we're not paying for taxes. Obviously with Section 8, sometimes they close it off, and people have to they become problemsome. So for people to actually have that affordable housing option, we have the affordable housing option for people that make minimum wage or make 20, 25 grand, or the baby boomers, which is our biggest demographic, is they literally, a lot of them have the Social Security, 1,300, or they have, I think 75% is less than 30,000 in savings. So their only option is affordable housing, like mobile home parks. And they have like their nice little lot. And how we, this industry is like the good old boys, basically. So a lot of people I said that when I initially mentioned was that people have developed it. It's, greatest generation. They've developed in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And sometimes a second or third generation owners. So right now we're seeing the biggest transition of people moving out of the space because they're getting such crazy offers for it now. We're seeing a lot of people coming over from multifamily because our cap rates are about 2 points higher. We have the lowest failure rate of all real estate for the last 50 years. And it's been by far the top performing. Even Wall Street Journal just talked about this. All the major money managers have been talking about this. Has been the top performing asset of pretty much all investments. And then some of the REITs have been performing 4,000 or 5,000% in the last 10 years. It's just crazy. But the reason is, it's not my backyard. You can't develop new ones, like you said, and you have this huge demand. It's only going to increase. And then what happens during recessions? Well, people get pushed down. They don't have the jobs aren't out there, and then people that just have a little savings, they have to scale down. So we always have this demand, and you can't develop new ones. So how we identify is a lot of it just industry relationships. So I've been in the space 15 years, like I mentioned. I was part of probably the top 2 biggest brokerage in the country. I was the president of the Midwest for that. And just going to all the trade shows. I was actually supposed to speak on the national stage in April with Ben Carson, the National Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, which I was talking about before earlier. And that got canceled, obviously, with COVID. And Warren Buffett's Clayton Holmes, the CEO. So building those relationships enough to even speak on the national stage, one of the 12 speakers, you get a lot of access to inside deals, basically. So they'll give deals to people they know, like, and trust. They've been in the space, go to the trade shows, you're out to dinner with them. Then somebody coming in, hey, I own apartment buildings. I want to get involved in the space. Kind of like that, kind of good old boys. So that's how we have access to deals. And we're doing a 10 million raise right now for accredited investors. So we'll basically give somebody the opportunity for a accredited investor to put in 50, 100, 200,000. Because if you get a small park, you still need to put $1 million down. So now you get more familiar with the asset, get all the benefits of it. And then top of that, which is the craziest thing, multifamily is 27.5. You should probably hear Grant Cardone talk about 27.5, like the depreciation schedules. Land is 15 years. Mobile home parks, you're basically just renting land. So you have 15-year depreciation, so you get better, your taxes like a lot better in your K1s. And then you have the 27.5 for the house. And then with the CARES Act, a couple years ago, 2017, if you guys are familiar with this, but you could do the bonus depreciation, 100% depreciation for the next 5 years until 2022. So you could depreciate everything in 1 year. Crazy. So a lot of real estate benefits right now with like the tax, that the CARES Act that came out.
Yeah. So these parks that you're looking and evaluating, are you looking for ways to add some sort of value, and how do you manage these parks? Do you have another entity that does that, or how does that look?
Great questions. So when we're looking to, the main thing with parks is the underlying infrastructure. So if you know it's older asset, you want to make sure like the water, sewer, electric, all, the roads, and depending on your region, trees, because of, branches falling down, but the infrastructure is the biggest component. And then also depending on, flood zone, EPA, you want to make sure like it's not going to be in a flood zone. Like you're not close to like the certain rivers, or like if you're in New Orleans, for example, with the hurricane. So those are like the biggest components you want to look for. And then also when we're like for managing the property, we have a third party manager we're partnered with. It's the biggest in the country, sorry. So they have about 33,000 lots. They manage a couple of the big institutional investors. So we have that, like basically built an all-star team that's doing everything from the management to the fund administration to the fund CPA. We literally just handpicked everyone. And then we made it even technology friendly. We have this portal which you can see everything transparent, what we're doing, company announcements, and just being full transparent, but also building this all-star team. But yeah, the management is the biggest component of parks versus understanding like the challenges with the infrastructure, understanding the local market, locations number one, also trends, jobs. But we do have the supply and demand, not in your backyard. So it brings a lot of favorable, risk factors to us with better yields because of that. But then making sure you have the right property manager. The property manager we have is like stellar. They're the biggest in the country. So in this space.
Sure. So I'm going to guess that you run into parks that you need to replace trailer houses or add some newer models. I mean, how do you get trailer houses into these parks to increase the value, and what are some of those other low-hanging fruits on how you can improve the numbers?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. The biggest challenge, like I said, because remember in the late 90s we had 400,000 new homes, and then now it's 100,000. Clayton Homes, which is if you're a park owner, they have if you become a dealer, you need about 10 lots open. They have the 21st finance program, which is they'll finance it, and they'll do some money down, no money down, or very little, but you have to kind of back it as the park owner, and you have to be a dealer. And so also looking with the local dealers, certain dealers, if you have 8 or 10, or if you're in a hot market, if you're in Texas, for example, Texas has a really hot market just for affordable housing and just housing in general and real estate. Sometimes the local dealers will come to you and say, hey, can we put a couple in here? And what they do is they can command about $8,000 to $10,000 more. They'll stage it, but they're basically, because the biggest obstacle for the dealer is to find a park to put it in. So they'll come to you, or you reach out to the local dealer, especially if you're in like Texas or some of those Rocky states where there's like a real demand right now. They'll come in and put a few different trailers in there if you have enough lots, and they'll beautify it, and they can charge $8,000-$10,000 and they can help market it for you. So that's a great angle for that. Without poaching, remember I said poaching is basically stealing from the local park. You can still look within like a 2 or 3 hour distance. I would also talk to the local transporters, all the transporters in your state, and ask them, hey, is anybody looking to get rid of some units, and they're looking to put in new units? And is it, based on your expert opinion, do you think it's, able to be transported here in good condition, bring it to my park? Because like for the park owner, like I said, going back to that, every time you have a new trailer or like 70s, 80s, that's $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 in basic equity to the the value of the park. And then the cash flow, obviously, $300, $400, $500 per month in rent.
So it's kind of an unwritten rule, this poaching from other trailer parks.
If you don't want to start wars. I mean, look, you can get, as long as it's like you're not your local person, because you could say, hey, I'll buy yours first. I'll pay your people. I'll move them out for you for free, and then I'll call them and give them flowers or whatever. So, I mean, whatever you could do to get somebody's good side and bring them over. Because what happens a lot of times, they'll say, well, we'll move it across the street for you out of our pocket because it's worth so much that, even though it's $5,000 or $10,000, even if it's across the street, the $40,000, $50,000, so still had $30,000 and they don't have to go buy a new home. So, but the dealers are probably the first angle, depending on your state. If you have a lot of dealers, like the bigger park states, we'll definitely have some dealers that work with you if you have enough open or vacancies. But,
sure. And you typically work with those dealers, and they would just bring in a trailer house, and then they in turn try to sell it on terms, but leave it in your park. I see.
Exactly. And they get a premium for it. So they can market it and they can say, hey, look at this beautiful community. Because that's the biggest thing it's just like when you go to the dealership, it's just like in a lot, in rocks mainly, or maybe cement, but like to see it in an actual community where you're going to live, it's a lot of value there. And then they stage it, just like, stage it and like, oh, it looks pretty. Like he'll be your neighbor. Here's your neighbor. This is how the park looks. They command a price and they do the marketing for you. And so for them, it's just an easier way to sell it and they can still get a little more money for it.
Sure. Well,
no,
go ahead.
It's just find a state that has it like a lot. Certain, like Illinois doesn't have a lot, but certain states do have a lot of dealers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in our area, I don't think there's quite a few dealers, but that's just a really interesting strategy. So, we've talked for a good half hour already. Is there anything that we probably should have covered? I don't want to make sure we miss anything. There's quite a bit of stuff here for people. Yeah,
I think if the people dive into this, it's a great niche. I think you're solving affordable housing. It affects a lot of people, and we're going to see more of it because anybody that's been in real estate from the last recession, remember how hard it was. Banks, it gets hard to get financing. You don't need a lot of capital. And some of these people, you're really doing them a favor. So somebody wants to move out, like say if they're in the Midwest or they just want to move out to like visit their family or get out of the mobile home, that they'll give it to you for sometimes just ask what they want. You can be fair with them, but sometimes they'll like literally give you a $10,000-$50,000 trailer for like $3,000. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. You just go up to them like, what do you want for it? Like, no, I'm like, sure. Like, that's what you want? Okay, cool. And then you could just literally just turn around, paint the outside. All of a sudden you make a $12,000 profit. We've had, going back, I forgot to answer this because you asked this before, but yeah, we've had we had the best flip we did this year was $29,000. The person gave it to us for $1,000 because they live in the park basically for like 7 years. Like, I don't want, like, how much do you want? Like, $1,000. Like, no, how much do you really want? Just want to get out of here. I got my retirement. I'm good. Then we just literally painted the deck and then put new carpet in. It was $500 and we didn't even put it on Facebook for more than like an hour. So like this, somebody just came up and scooped out. So a lot of opportunity in the space. In the rent controlled states, you can make a 6-figure profit in like California, Florida. Well, Florida's not a rent controlled state, but or Oregon. So there's a lot of opportunity. It's a great niche. It serves a lot of people's affordable housing. It's really just helping people. So that's the cool thing of the day. You're not competing like compared to single family. Everyone's doing it. So if you want to get an easy way to get into something that's less challenging, doesn't take a lot of capital, and it's not hard, you not have to figure out if there's knockdown walls, there's a perfect niche. You flipping the trailers, be in the Mobile Home Wealth Academy, or if you're an accredited investor and you just want to armchair coupon collect checks every month, let us with the fund basically get you in and manage your capital. We get a quarterly payout, you get the tax benefits, the tax depreciation schedules, and it's all transparent. That's Midwest Park Capital Fund. So
sure. So I'm going to make sure to include all of those links in the show notes. I really appreciate you giving us the time here tonight. Midwest Park Capital, and you have quite a bit of. You're pretty active on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn, so people can probably easily find you there.
Yep.
So look for Jonathan Tuttle, and it's spelled Tuttle.
Yep.
But I really appreciate your time tonight. This is eye-opening. I really appreciate the new perspective.
Well, I appreciate your time, and hopefully the audience gets some value out of it. It's a great time to be in the real estate. We're probably the best industry to be prepared for the next coming downturn. So if we could be positioned right, help people, it's a great niche and a great industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And again, we'll make sure to have those links in the show notes, but hope we can do it again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you.
We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes.
And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @housedudes. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other investors out there find the show.
And remember, massive positive impact requires
massive positive action. We'll see you next time. This episode was brought to you by housedudes.com. Do you have time to actively manage flipping and rentals yourself? If so, go for it. If you live in a market that won't cash flow or don't have the time to do all the work, are you just out of luck? If there was a way to participate more passively, would that appeal to you? I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the form on housedudes.com/investors, and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. This is first come, first serve, and we will have to stop taking applications when our goals are met. See you at housedudes.com/investors.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.